All right, I got 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. First I'll take attendance. Brian?
Here.
John?
Here.
I'm here. Tom?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Sal?
Here.
Mike Reese?
Here.
Mike Sampson?
Here.
Sadie? Karen? All right, everybody's here. Great. So we got a email from the town administrator indicating that we needed to hold a meeting tonight. Honestly, don't know what it's about, so I'm gonna go ahead and just turn it over to Chet. And is this a budget committee meeting or is this a public hearing?
It's a public hearing.
It's a public hearing. So do I have to make a motion to open the public hearing? All right, I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing. Okay, so Sal, you're making the motion?
Make motion, second.
And Mark, you're seconding it. Okay, great. Good to vote. Yeah, I guess all those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye. Opposed? All right, hearing is open. Mr. Town Administrator, I will turn this over to you.
All right, thank you for all coming in at such short notice. The town, as you know, has been working on the water upgrades program for a year or two. It didn't make it onto the ballot in March for a variety of reasons. We weren't able to get all of the pieces and parts that we have to do now that got compressed. So we started after the vote in early April, talking to the attorney about getting the petition into the court. In May, the select board signed the authorization to send the petition to court. They went in June. Last week was our court date, where we got approved to actually have the special town meeting, because the reason we needed a special town meeting and the reason for the compressed schedule is we have to accept the grant monies that have been offered to the town by the end of September of this year, or they go away. So basically what we're looking at is a project that actually has been combined. There's the distribution system reallocation, and then there's the lead remediation. They were combined at the state level. The lead remediation is about a $700,000 grant. The water distribution system is 1.457, and then the town has a match of 690,000. That starts in about 3 years. Those are all included in the what the draft article will, well, it's not a draft article, or that will be the article with one minor edit. But the goal here is to answer any questions and how it affects rates. One of the things that we want to have make everybody aware of is there's going to be a water rate increase. There hasn't been one for many years, regardless of what happens with this vote. Because it's been running a little short in the neighborhood of $40,000, $50,000 on an annual basis. We are going to turn that back to a plus. One of the big benefits is once we get the water rates corrected, we will have an additional amount of money that will be potentially forgivable. One of the things that has to change in the warrant article, you'll see that it says we will, or other aid or grant monies. The state issuing agency has said we have to change that to principal forgiveness from grant, because these are actually SRF loans that are being forgiven. And once we get the rate structure in alignment with the state requirements, we will then be eligible to receive additional forgiveness. So that's the goal. We also have approximately $200,000 in funds that were from ARPA that we have in the town that we will be able to use as portion of the match. So we are looking at, but what we want to do with the warrant article is make sure we cover everything that we have to cover per the requirements, which is the $690,000 that the town may need to take out in a 20 or 25-year cycle, which is included in the future rate structures. So basically, the whole purpose of the meeting is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2.94 million for the purpose of financing a water system improvement to authorize the issuance of not more than $690,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act. To fund the costs of the project and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and determine a term of borrowing, to authorize the town officials to apply for, accept, and expend federal EPA congressional directed spending, state and other grant monies or principal forgiveness monies in respect of the project, and to use such monies to finance the project, reduce the amount of bonds or notes issued for the project, to prepay such bonds or notes, or to pay debt service on such bonds or notes, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take any other action or pass any other any other vote relative thereto. And the one thing we want to keep in mind, and if anybody is either not aware or has forgotten what the water system improvements are, the one project that's already been done with grant monies or SRF monies, I used the wrong word again, grant, was the source improvements for the water. There's two issues that we're dealing with. One is the lead remediation in the downtown, which will be all replaced at this point. And the other piece of it is the distribution system is being redesigned because the way the system currently is designed, the water feeds the system and the distribution system first, and then back feeds the tank. The issue is the only time the tank water gets used is if you run low pressure on the town side and in the village side. So what you end up with is water that's not turning over quick enough in the tank. So this will actually feed, the water feed will go to the tank and then reallocate the distribution center and feed from there to better serve the town and make sure water quality is improved. So that's the purposes of the project. That's the funding that's available. And what the voters will be asked in September, it's September 24th is the actual special town meeting. The 24th of August, and these are dates that were set by the attorney in the court just because of the notice times. Like if we work back from the furthest out we could be with a vote, back to the deliberative session, back to the select board, and this is how we ended up with today. It's my wife's birthday. I'm here. You know, there wasn't any options. I asked if we could move a day or two, and they're like, no. So we have this next Thursday will be a special select board meeting to authorize the next phase. And then we will have the deliberative session on the 24th and then move forward towards a vote. And what we're deciding today is, because this isn't, as much as I don't like to say it in a fashion that it almost seems like you have to, we're gonna have to do this work anyway, no matter what happens. And the question is, do we want to take the 700,000 and the 1.5 million of forgivable money and only have to pay a portion, and hopefully not even have to pay as much as what we're estimating now. So that's basically what the purpose of this is.
A question, so September 24th, special town meeting deliberative session. Is that to approve of this for the warrant for next year, or will there
No,
be a
this is-
vote taken?
On August 24th, they're
August?
actually the same day. August 24th is the deliberative session. And September 24th is the actual town meeting vote. We have to vote before the 30th of the month or we lose the grant.
So we'll have an election at the.
We will have an election on the 24th.
Okay. But the 24th is, August, the
24th.
deliberative session, September 24th is gonna be the voting.
Yes.
That's 690,000. Is that gonna be paid back out of the general fund, or is that gonna be rates?
That is paid back by the users. I mean, the one thing there's confusion everywhere with this. The town owns the water system. It's their infrastructure. But the users pay the expense. So this will not affect the tax rate,
Okay,
the way it's designed and laid out in this presentation you guys were sent, and
Yeah.
I can show here if we
Yeah.
need to. So yeah, no, it does not affect the tax rate.
anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I've got it.
Your name, sir?
I'm Gary Webb.
Okay,
So I haven't been through this kind of thing before, but it looks to me like you're asking the town to approve the financing for the project that's already been done. Is that usually how it's done,
Well,
or?
when you say what's been already done,
like the intake pipe into the lake.
No, this is not, that's a separate grant, separate project. These are the next two phases.
Oh, so.
This
there-
is. Portion of that money has been paying a portion of that project. This project on the design side, we've been doing all the design work for this next phase out of that first amount of money. This is what we have to do after that's done. That's a $550,000 SRF loan. And I think we've spent in the low 400,000 or
On the intake
400
pipe?
on the intake pipe. So that's done.
So you didn't need a public hearing for that?
I believe that must have happened a while ago. Yeah, I would assume that happened a while ago.
Wow.
Because we would not have been able to accept the money and do that without it.
Can you tell me when that was? Is that easy?
I cannot answer that question. I'm not here quite long enough. Mike has been.
Yeah, Mike.
There were several hearings on it. And actually, several votes at town meetings on it. There was authorizations. Of that 2.9 million, it's been previously authorized for up to 2.696. So that dollar amount isn't significantly different. It was done piecemeal because there was a bunch of different steps that were put in place and a bunch of different funding sources. Which included ARPA money, CDS, congressional directed spending money. And state revolving fund monies and a whole bunch of money went into it, including cash that we had on hand. So it's been a mishmash for a long time. And I hope that is, I mean, there were serious hearings involved.
Yeah, I looked through the select board notes and the only thing I saw was, I think on January 9th of this year, there was a meeting.
That's from the minutes of the 9/20/22 selectmen's meeting, where I did the final report I had.
Okay,
So you'll see all the stuff in there that had been previously approved.
and was there a design approved at that time as well?
Yes, there was preliminary design from Horizons.
And-
It's changed, but it was.
It did?
Yep,
Was there a public hearing when it changed?
it
or-
doesn't need to have a public hearing as long as there's an authorization and the purposes are identified. And that hasn't changed at all. So to give you an example, rerouting the water line from the reservoir down to the village. Was the topic, that's a major component. That included the section going from the lake to the treatment plant and from the treatment plant to the village. So there's a change in how it's gonna get to the village, it's gonna be. Fed down to the tank to do what he wants to do, which is to flush the system basically in a timely manner. I don't know that the cost is gonna be a hell of a lot different, but it is a difference in the plant. I don't know, if pump station's still under there or not, I don't know if the river crossings are in it, but that probably hasn't changed. But then all the removal of the lead, there are a bunch of homes in the village that have lead entrances, and I've seen them personally. Where there's solid lead pipes going from the road into the houses, and that's part of the federal initiative. To remove lead in the system, that's been in there right from the get-go. And that's why the funding came in from congressionally directed spending, because it's all about lead remediation.
Mike, what I'm most interested in is the relocation of the intake pipe.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand the process by which that was done. Because it came as a surprise to me that the intake pipe was located where it was. And the reservoir boundary was pushed out. So that's what I'm most curious about is how
Is anybody here from Horizons?
that
No.
decision got made.
Oh, good. I know something about it, but I'm not an authority. It was done after my time, but I have talked to Coffee about it. And I know the basic. They put the intake pipe where it is because they need a certain volume in order to sustain the system and have that elevation off the bottom, so it didn't have to damage. So they put in frameworks to do all that stuff, and then, where that pipe is where it needed to be to have the correct depth on the water. I'm reasonably sure that for the first 3 years of that project, nobody thought about what that does to the isolation distances that are required around the intake pipe. So when I saw that announced in a flash email for the town, I said, oh yeah, that's a pretty good idea, because by moving the pipe out, the isolation distance grows as well. It's a state law, as far as I remember, John knows more than I do, but there's the required isolation distance on the end of the pipe. That was a result of building the pipe the way it's built.
That's what I'm asking, because what that's done is it's changed the border. I'm the dot on the southeast side of that arc.
And I've heard about your situation. I don't know any details about it, maybe John.
Well, again, the issue I'm most curious about is, and I think you've intimated that when the extension was put in, it wasn't considered or expected that the state or whoever would require that the boundary would change. That's the impression I've got.
Well, it was permitted, so it had to go through a permit process. So that's when it would have been established on the permit.
I'm not getting the same information.
But I
from
think
state.
the topic is really a different topic than tonight, and you really need a meeting with the water department and the selection.
I've asked to be put on the agenda next week.
Because
so-
that's really the forum for that, because it's not really the topic for tonight.
Okay, I would like to respond to something Mike just said, if that's okay.
Sure.
And then I'll be done. This is from Pierce Ringrod. It's my understanding the town's planning to conduct field work to validate the accuracy of the existing line. He goes on to say that the town, the boundary is not set based on where the buoys were moved. The town is yet to submit any formal change. Canaan is moving the buoys back to the location where they have historically been set. So I know this isn't the forum for that, but Mike, I wanted you to be aware that that's what I'm hearing from the state.
I mean, I've really had nothing to do with that piece. And John's right, Ken, it's really,
I get
it's an issue.
I get it.
It isn't an issue.
I get
And
it.
just so you know, when I had, the only thing I know about it is John Coffey came, when that question came up. And he told me that they're moving the buoys back to where they were when they started.
Oh, they did. He did.
He told, I don't know if it's happened yet, but
No.
they are moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
He did tell me that.
Yeah. So in this context, I'm most interested about how the money was raised vis-a-vis the design. Because I'm trying to figure out, when the intake pipe was put in the way it was and how that dovetails with that. So that was the purpose.
Basically, that project is a completely separate project. It's done and they've approved it at the final. And this is basically the connection to the end of that.
Yeah.
It's on 21 and 22.
Right. So this is, we're just moving on to phase 2 and 3.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
Yeah.
There were permits that were issued
Yes.
at times.
Right.
Sal?
I have a couple of questions. What was the last rate increase? Does anybody know? Just out of curiosity. Maybe, probably.
Yeah, it was,
Quite a while
I think,
ago.
around 21.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And do the rates have to be approved at a town meeting or by warrant?
Select
or
board.
just- No.
They have to be approved. The select board will have a meeting where we bring the rates to them and they will take input and then set the rates.
Okay. And do we have any campaign or anything about making sure we inform enough of the town that this is important and that people should come and vote so we take the grants? Just the grants and the rates are totally separate things, right? The grants are, accept the grants or not. Right? And the
Yes.
rates will either be going up or they won't be going.
Well, okay, just to clarify, they're going up to bring the system back into the black.
Yep.
And then there's the new part, which is
Right.
this piece.
Okay. So do we have a campaign to say that, this is important, that we need to accept this money?
Well, I mean, basically, the way I was going to talk about it is once the select board authorizes the town meeting and then it's gonna be on the ballot with this being, with the one minor correction, the warrant article is doing an email blast, putting it in the newsletter, things like that, that this is something that we wanna make sure everybody's aware
Right.
that's happening.
Right, you're gonna do that before the deliberative. stuff.
That is correct.
Okay, great, thanks, appreciate that.
just for a frame of reference, I think the project's necessary. It's part of it early on, so I understand why the project's necessary, and the dollar amount isn't significantly different than what it was back in 21, 22. So that's fine. I'm also a member of the Economic Development Committee. And I thank you, whoever, Monica, did you send out, somebody, I think Monica sent out the records, somebody sent out the records.
Yeah.
This afternoon, or this morning, and I did have a chance, I went through them all, and looked at them. Have you got even a rough guesstimate? You know, it looks like it's probably somewhere around 690,000 borrowing. Okay. You got a rough estimate of what the range is gonna be for debt service per year to do that?
When we did a couple of options, it really comes down to what term do we want? Because, you know, we could make it 150,000 or we can make it 38,000 if we go out 25 years. And the goal is, you know, there's not that many users. The goal is going to be to keep the annual expense as low as possible. And also to make and hopefully the principal will come down before we actually have to go to bond, because I think we're 2 years away from that, and we're hoping interest rates look a little better too. So all of those things combined, but I think we have a target to make sure we stay within that $30,000 to $40,000 a year for the total package rate is kind of the goal, and it's just how can we configure that?
Okay, so there's 3 questions. So the second question is, okay. I went through and actually calculated what the average is for residential use and what it would impact over between now and 2028 on the water side, and then now and it's in the memo.
Right.
It came from Judd, or I think it came from Judd. There's a significant increase in revenue. Previous boards that looked at it and looked at how much the debt service is likely to cost. And the range at that time was somewhere between 55,000 to 60,000 a year and maybe 80,000 a year. But with these, in the memo that Judd sent, the revenues are increasing significantly. And I know there was an assumption in this document of 3% a year for cost of living. But I'm just making this as a comment that it's going to increase the revenues in several orders of magnitude over what's necessary for debt service.
Well, it was designed to go with debt service, and some of the revenue is because we have the fire hydrants and things of that nature that are a town function, is most towns typically put a little bit of money into that.
You put that in, you've got the
That's
fire
in there.
safety
Right.
for 30,000. I thought that was a very creative idea, and I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is that if you look at the overall expenditures, they're even well north of $150,000 a year to the water and sewer.
Right.
And that means that the debt service is either going to be horrendous or it's greatly in excess of the 3% that you got in there. So I'm assuming that there's other costs that are in place. And with the way this is worded, this is my third point, I don't think I care, because you're still, and that's another problem, is voters don't really approve the water and sewer budgets. They approve it sort of in the warrant.
Right.
So they say, and that's required by DRA, but the
Right.
truth of the matter is it comes out of user fees.
Right.
The board can raise the user fees anytime they want to, you're correct. So they want more money, they just go and raise more user fees. And that's in the unique situation, you're doing it one way because DRA says to do it. But that's not what the law says. The law says if you do it on user fees, that's how it gets paid. So, okay, that's all well and good. Don't care about that. I am concerned about the concept that there's a lot more money being raised in this plan than is necessary for the actual reconstruction and for a reasonable cost of living adjustment of the budget. And you could always raise them as you needed to on the cost of living. I'm not opposed to raising the rates. I've got 2 fears. One is on the sewer side, it's a 50% increase, basically over 2 years or 3 years. On the water side, and I don't want to get into details, I'm just saying it, you can believe me or don't believe me, it's fairly up to you. On the sewer side, the increases are a lot more. It's like 110% over 4 years. And 108%. The range is between 108 and 110% in fees. Okay. I guess to be a little pricey. So if you are a user of water with a 4-bedroom house or even a 3-bedroom house. You're using 400 gallons a day, the cost to you under the new system is gonna be $3,500 a year for just the water. And on top of that is the sewer, and the sewer cost on top of that is another $1,500. So it's gonna cost $5,000 a year for water and sewer use. Okay. In the spreadsheet you provided us, which has modeling, the modeling looks familiar, it looks like the modeling I used. So glad to see it was modeled, and on that modeling. The problem is you got some businesses that are spending 8 times it. So now you're $40,000 or $50,000 for water and sewer bills. And I don't know whether the businesses know that. That is a concern that I'm raising from an economic point of view. I did say hearing, so I'll shut up. And then the final piece of this, whoever's doing it, Monica, could you put the warrant article back up? Has the attorney reviewed that one yet?
The attorney prepared it.
Is this John?
No, this is our bond counsel, which is Stephen Whitley.
Okay. Somebody ought to make a call and just remind me what the state law requires for awarding on a bond vote. In terms of the bond, the amount to be borrowed. And other parts that have to be in the language under state law.
Okay.
And I assume any bond attorney is gonna know that, but there has to be some more specificity and say we're gonna borrow not more than 690,000. That's all it says.
Okay, I will bring that up to him. This
That's
was,
it.
and this was approved by the judge.
So what?
Just,
There aren't many judges that read municipal law on a regular basis. Well, actually. Anyway, so my 2 comments are. It's a lot more money going into the proposed rate structure is necessary to complete this construction. A lot, it's like 3 times.
when you look at revenue.
Yeah.
On that top line right there. It goes up like $25,000 when we start taking on debt service, and then it goes up, it's incrementally, it's not a huge number. I mean, sewer is not included in this,
I'm sorry, I
chart.
can't- All right, but I'm looking at the same thing here on my computer that was provided. And what I did was I actually did the calculation to see
Mhm.
what it is. All I can tell you is. That the revenue goes up significantly. So you had, and this is in the memo. You had $145,000 in revenue for just water. And what was the revenue that was approved for this year? Do you know, anybody know? Do you remember offhand what it was? About $100,000.
So the revenue and that we're collecting is more like 60 or 70, and we're expending about 100.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
what was approved was $100,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So this says in the first year, it's $145,000. When you get to 28, it's $220,000. Okay? So
That's 190.
I.
I'm just saying,
Look, I'll come in and talk to you. All I can tell you is,
Right.
when I looked at what is in that memo, I can read it, if you want me to read it to you. It says $220,000. I'm sorry, I mean, I'm just reading what you gave me.
and that was from Don Jutton, and we've gone through and had to make some modifications in it.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. The language is in here for a total revenue of approximately $220,060 versus estimated expenses of $203,000. Well, the estimated expenses were about $100,000 now, and the estimated revenues are supposed to be $100,000. Understand that they weren't. I believe you.
Mhm.
Okay. So all I'm saying is that that's an increase of $120,000, and it's just on water, which is a little bit higher than what the debt service is likely to be.
That's correct.
There ought to be some I personally think there ought to be some explanation of why it's that.
And we will give you that explanation.
Okay, but that's it. Other than that, I think the project's sound and all the rest. And the only question is, there is some specificity required for bonding. You gotta know a little bit more than that. And if bond council thinks it's enough, well, that's their bond council, so it should. So, and then that's it, those two issues. Revenues side is pretty dramatic, which will have an impact on businesses, so we're trying to get more. Although I've talked with other members of the Economic Development Committee. It's not something I didn't anticipate, you know, in the report I gave back in 2022, I said you're gonna have to borrow money. So I'm not at all surprised about that. There is a way to overcome that cost, and that is you're doing by the figures that are in this report, and I actually called Coffee to verify it this afternoon. He thinks you're doing about 20,000 gallons a day. And looking at the report, says about 24,000 gallons a day. The capacity of the facility is limited by how much water you have on the water side, and on the sewer side by 75,000 gallons a day. Basically, you know, it's slightly different than that, but it's in that ballpark. So you got plenty of capacity for sewer. And as long as we don't drain Keenan Street Lake, you've got capacity for water. So how much? You could double the user capacity in the village based on those numbers. If you did, you could then have a viable, sustainable water and sewer rate that match the rest of the world. So, you know, one thing that somebody might be interested in, I don't go to board of selectmen's meetings.
I think this is a more appropriate conversation for that. I think we're off track.
Okay, I disagree because this is a bond and we're talking about how much revenue is gonna be raised in the bond.
I have a question regarding that. So I know Chat has said a couple of times that there's been a shortfall in water and sewer.
Yep.
So that means that that's being paid for out of the general fund, not from user fees.
That never has been before last year. That's not true. How did you do that legally?
Can you tell us looking back at the historical data, was it always until the user fees?
So what's happening is the trial balance is slowly decreasing, and at some point, the sewer and water fund will not have any money in it. So right now, it's just draining the sewer fund balance and the water fund balance.
And one of the issues that we had was when we first got the ARPA money, there was talk about using it for this project, and it got put into the water fund, and it was holding an unusually high balance because of it. And we've now moved that into a separate line item, and we're getting a better read on where we are.
Okay,
We also have an error in water and sewer rates for at least 8 years, where we're undercharging people. So.
That I don't. But to go, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to. But I will say it is an enterprise account, it's a dedicated account, you can't come in. So you can legally go back to the voters and take it out because of Article. Whatever it is, Article 3, I think it is, it's usually the article for water and sewer, because that does. Then make the town taxpayers liable for the whole system if they don't get enough funding. But at least for the 12 years that I was intimately familiar with it, not once did any town tax revenue go into that project on that basis, never happened. So I think it would be dangerous to do that in light of what's happening in the past. So all I'm saying is that I thought that the revenues city were relevant, and I think that the revenues are pretty high. I think it'll have a dramatic impact, but I am suggesting that one of the ways to offset the impact is to get more users in to build the capacity.
Well, there's no question, and I understand that we have people that have water in front of their businesses or homes that aren't connected yet, and it's like, is there some? I think there is some ability to capture something, and that's exactly what we have to do as soon as we can. We just have to vote on the worst case scenario, the case we have today.
At least there's a couple of members here from the economic development.
Yeah.
And we have talked about increasing working as a group to help encourage more commercial development in the village. And we do just that.
And while you're at
Helps
it-
Keep the rates down.
And where you're at, we need affordable housing.
So
That's actually.
can I ask, so, is there an over capacity issue on what I'm hearing is we need to get more water out of the lake, is that right?
No, we need more users.
We need more users.
For it to,
'Cause we have the capacity.
With the existing water out of
Yes.
the lake? Okay.
Chad, I had a couple questions. You had said earlier that, and I remember, I'm pretty sure the water sewer budget was 187,000, so 90 from revenue, something like that. From the water, and you said we're only collecting 60?
I mean, yeah, we've been-
Paying? the water?
No, it's because we haven't changed the rates in a couple of years, so it hasn't kept up.
That was a quick question. And then the second one, we have 210 users, I think, or 213, I forgot about it. How many of those have lead in supply line to the house? I know part of this project.
That is a John Coffey question, and I'm thinking it was in the 20 to 30 of them, but it's also the main, like, I don't remember the number of actual users, but I know it's the main rate downtown. Well, there's one section of it that's old.
There's actually lead in there. If you've got cast iron,
Yeah,
you put caulking in, they were leaded.
Right.
okay.
So you got two areas. You've got actual lead lines that go from the main into the houses.
Right.
Every time we've had a break, we identified a whole stretch of houses that have lead lines going in the house.
Yeah,
About
right.
that big and it's all lead.
And you can bend it.
And then you had the caulking with the lead ceiling was a problem on the old mains. There's other sections that are nowhere not a problem.
Yes.
And it's expensive, you know.
Well, the 700,000 portion of it is strictly for the lead remediation.
Right.
And that's 100% funded. There's no town match on that portion. That's the one that's 100% funded.
Understood. I just didn't know how big the problem was on the intake. I didn't realize the trunk had lead. I thought it was mostly service line.
The 40 to 50 number is in the ballpark. It's somewhere between
It's-
40 and 70.
Yeah, I can't remember, because I know we've talked about it, and John has it right on the top of his head, but it was in that vicinity.
So it's closer to 30% of the users instead
Yes.
of 50%.
Sal, did you want
Yeah,
to say something?
Arian, do we have a current balance in the water and sewer? Is there a balance in there? Is it positive or negative?
It's currently negative for this year because we're behind with our billing and collection.
Or will it be positive at some point in time this year, or will we collect all of stuff, or no?
It depends on what happens with the rate.
Okay, well, all right, so right now we have a filtering function in negative territory. And when we get to 2025, we got some projected numbers, I'm just working over the gut numbers, there's a $17,000 surplus on the sewer and $58,000 plus surplus on the water. That money's just gonna go and balance that out, or is it gonna be just a lot of excess dollars? Do we know?
That would slowly build up the individual fund balance. And then the year after that, 2023, we have to start paying back the loan.
Right, but still, even in 26, you've got a 14,000 plus surplus for sewer and a 15,000 surplus for water. So even though you are servicing the debt, which is already factored in there, you're now basically getting the two of them together, you're basically putting another $30,000 additional in the fund. Correct?
Yes, and the other part that came up in the whole consultant analysis
Mm.
was that we don't have any capital reserve for water, sewer, we're not saving for any future improvement.
Yeah.
So that also does have to be a consideration in the future budget.
Right. So I get it. So this plan basically starts to build that fund up, it's like we're trying to build up the undesignated fund and the other funds that we need money, right? Right.
And it's also
Same thought
related,
process, the same thought process that we were going through the other day to see if we can.
and it's also related to the rates starting the year before debt service started, so we build up a little bit of a balance to accommodate, to help with the debt service as well.
Well, I don't get that so much, because if you're saying that in 2025, you're gonna basically have a $58,000 surplus. You got a $58,000 surplus. In 26, this is just the water, you got a $15,000 surplus, and that includes the debt service. So the 58 has nothing to do with the fact that we're gonna have a $15,000 surplus in 2026.
No, what I'm saying is the rates are
So he's
basically the
gonna-
same and the
yeah.
debt service comes in 26.
I'm sorry?
The debt service starts in 26.
Right, yeah, but that's why you're only having a 15,000.
Correct.
Surplus instead of a 58,000.
Correct.
surplus. But you are having a surplus.
That's correct,
Debt service is already factored in there.
correct.
Okay, so theoretically, the 58,000 is going to be part of your build up your fund.
Yes.
Okay.
Tom?
So I just want, so what worries me about this whole thing is and how we present things to the public and voters. Like the voters are used to March, having a vote on warrant articles in March, they'll vote in November. And in March, you'll get 500 people come out in March or September, and in November, you get 1,600. And the purpose of this really is to secure the grant money. And theoretically, you could get 30 people come out on September 24th because they're not used to it. And you can get it voted down.
That's why I was asking for having a campaign.
That's what,
Right.
you know, to build.
Yeah, no, we definitely need to, and one of the things that I would typically do. Leading up to when we're going to vote is start meeting with the local groups, whether it's, you know, the seniors or it's, you know, whatever groups we have that we can meet with, Lions Club. And having the conversation saying this is important. We're gonna have to do this anyway, and either we're gonna foot the whole 2.9 million, or we only have to put 690,000 at worst case.
Mhm.
And that's really, at the end of the day, the gist of it, is the goal is always going to be to minimize. What we charge user rates, we just have to break even and pay our bills.
Right, so it's how do you educate them, because
Correct.
that simple sheet, this is what we get in grants, is a simple sheet we have to come up with.
Right.
Because if you look at the warrant, if you're running in as a voter, oh, there's a vote tonight, you're running in, but that, you wouldn't know what the heck it's.
Yeah, no, we definitely have to have outreach.
I do concur that in this case, this vote is on bond and authorization to expend. And the only reason I raised the issue of rates is because it is related to the bond. But more importantly, I guess for me is what they're gonna do to the development of the village. We, about 8 years ago, Jeff Majewski came in and wanted to pull all those buildings out of the water and sewer district. Unlike Vermont, in New Hampshire, there's a guaranteed right for you to get out of a water or sewer district in spite of the fact that that district, unless it's changed in the last 2 years, and despite the fact that that district relies on those users to have that happen. And we spent 1.5 years with council figuring out exactly how the hell we're gonna defend against that. So that water, I'm just telling you this for information purposes, that fire safety charge.
Yeah.
You can create a fee, a tax rate that is a differentiated tax rate for the benefit of having something. That's it.
Yeah.
So the availability of water and sewer, and that's what we actually did in Jeff's case, was to make it clear to fine. So we won't charge you for the operational side of water and sewer, but we will charge you the pro rata part of the capital costs, and the part of the capital costs is significant. It's over 60%, so you're gonna still pay 60% of the rates anyway, even if you go to the expense of trying to put it in. Now, oh, by the way, legally, you can't put the property you got, you can't put water and sewer in the same property. So it went away, but I'm just warning you that if you go up that high, this is gonna pretty much go up at least 75–80% fees over the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So it needs adjustment, yes, and we did adjust it twice. And there is usually a hearing process, and the last time we did an adjustment, it's only for 10% increase. And that took something like 4 hearings and 6 months to get that through. So just a warning. So again, I'd like to repeat that I'm in favor of the bond, I'm in favor of completing the project. I only told you what my concerns were, which is just the amount, not on the debt service, but the amount of the budget.
Right.
I have a doomsday question, I guess, and that is, okay, so, the authorization for the bond gets defeated. And we look at it and we say, you know what, we can't afford 2.9 million, shut it down. Can we shut down the water and sewer in town?
Shut it down
Shut
completely.
it down, if the voters said no.
My guess
not
would
spending
be
this money.
that would be nearly impossible, given that the users in the downtown are not gonna be able to put in wells and meet any requirements to get a permit.
That's what I'm saying, doomsday, but.
Yeah, that's literally doomsday.
We're gonna get, I mean, we could get, we could get to that
And that
abyss.
gets back to the identifying how you're gonna present it to the public.
Right.
So if it goes this, if it doesn't go this, then it's gotta be clear
What that means.
what that means.
Yeah.
So that if you say no, that's fine to say no, but this is a consequence.
That's what I'm getting at. Like, oh, okay,
Right.
we're gonna keep
Right.
shipping leaded water to your house and your
Yeah.
kids are gonna get brain damage, okay? Or do you want?
And not that this is a new issue, but to show that there's a history of this, this has been going on for a few years now.
Two other quick comments. So first on the leaded water, it's not. We've tested by law all the time. And we've had, I think, in the 10 or 11 years I was involved with it, we had probably 5 positive tests at 5 locations out of 10 we were doing. But a different one every time, so it was like one here and there. In every case we went to it, and it's in the house itself.
Yeah.
So in spite of the fact that you got lead lines coming in, the residence time on the lead lines is not sufficient to actually draw any lead out of the damn pipes. It's when it's sitting in like a leaded joint on top of the piping where there's lead in the pipe. And it's sitting there for extended periods of time, that's when it actually occurs. So and the schools got really upset at one point because they had a positive test, they had a positive test on one sink out of all the sinks. And so that obviously was not the whole water system, it was just that particular unit. So the good news is, people aren't dying from lead right now. So that's a plus, and the other one is, just anecdotal. Town of Canaan has for years relied on Granite State Rural Water, and actually Coffey was a director of it for a long time, an officer of it. For a long period of time, it's a nonprofit, and it was set up through, I think, Conservation Agency. To manage and help towns with water and sewer projects. When I first came here, I asked, what are you doing for capital reserves? Because we were rebuilding all the capital reserves. He said, what do you want to do? So I told him I was gonna do it the same way that we did it historically for equipment and buildings and all that. I called him up and I said, so I gotta go up on the rates like 800%. He said, yeah. He said, well, we need to meet. So we met with the board of selectmen at the time and said, so what does everybody else do? Cities, towns, what do they do? He said, well, the state standard for most municipalities in New Hampshire, this was around 2012. For most municipalities in New Hampshire is to use OTF. So I can guess what some of those things might mean, but what does it mean? It says operate to failure. Because all these things were built with tons of federal money 30 years ago, and the federal money has not historically followed up on, it was a problem. But for the grace of ARPA and COVID, we would have been at failure in a bunch of systems in the state. So it's a legitimate issue. I don't want to be social, I'm just saying it's a legitimate issue. And you ought to do what you can, but it's like every other issue, you may need to spend more money, then the question is there a better way of getting the money? Other than loading it up on the existing rate papers. And all of that has to do, it could come up with the deliberative session where it ought to come up is at the selectmen's meetings when they make quick decisions to change the rates. And I'm guessing, once the public knows that the rates are gonna go up that much, 110% is a lot. They'll probably show up in hearings, is what I'm saying.
So,
Let me just make sure I understand it. The fees don't cover that we collect, don't cover the expense. We take the money from the general fund. So what happens?
No, right now you're just bringing the savings of the fund.
Right. But theoretically, if they don't, then we take the money from the general fund.
You have a,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike, you know the answer.
yeah, it's the reason that Article 3 is in there, and it was done because the state made us do it for the security of the water and sewer systems. It says to be raised by user fees, but it's also raised and appropriate article. So what it does is, it said the voters are saying, we agree as town voters in the town of Canaan, not the water and sewer district, but in the town of Canaan, to raise and appropriate the sum of X, which means it gets raised, period. And then it goes on to say, the money to come out of fees. So the question is, what happens if there's no fees? The answer is it goes out of the tax base. So I don't think it's likely to happen. And there's things you can do, and I think I understand what was being said about why it was only 60,000 as opposed. I got it, I understand what's going on, but that's not, that isn't a long-term issue per se. It's an issue that you have, but it's not a long-term issue.
Just make sure that, check when you get your selling point, that I'm sure you tell people that, we don't raise the fees. That, you know, as you go.
Well, like,
They're gonna collect, they're gonna have to pay money out of the general fund.
well, there's that, and the other, and that's from the town side.
Yes.
And from the user side. We vote this down, we still have to raise the fees, they're not,
No, I understand. that.
they're not tied
That- that-
together.
that-
So
separate thing.
that's the key, the fees are happening at some point, some level.
Don't mention the people.
Yes, but there's a solution. Sorry.
Oh, I agree, there's,
So the solution is, we've got 3 years to go find 50 housing units and put in a couple of commercial businesses that are significant users. And that gets rid of this issue, and you are raising money for the future.
and I agree with you. Because the reality is you have to,
You're having trouble.
the creating additional users is this key to anything. If
Yes,
we have to start spending more money on our overall operating budget. Well, if we have more people move in or more businesses or taxpayers, that's how you disperse that. I mean, that's something we have to be doing. But we have to start with, this is our worst case scenario, assume nobody moves into town in the next 3 years, this is what we're dealing with.
when
You
you're
know.
doing the education, it might be
Right.
nice to point out. Same thing you said about, it's not gonna go back to the taxpayers unless it's some huge.
Right.
And then the other piece is, and we will work to try to find more users and
Oh,
better
absolutely.
utilization of the flow in order to make it.
The goal is always to minimize the effect on taxpayers. But we don't know that answer yet.
Mike,
Yeah, I don't mean to be a knucklehead, but, this committee, people, members of this committee and the select board have known for years that, the fees weren't, funding properly the water and sewer. And so in effect, the rest of the town, taxpayers have been making up that shortfall. And now you're trying to correct that, and I'm very sensitive to what Mike is saying about sticker shock. But, you know, if I need a new septic tomorrow, the town's not giving me $30,000. If I need a new well tomorrow, you're not gonna collect an $8,000 to give me a new well. You know, but yet I've been, again, I don't mean a person, but you know, I've been paying for the 201 users in town. I've been subsidizing their water. So we all have been subsidizing their water. So
No.
So
yeah,
it's a-
You're just, all you're doing is guaranteeing
No.
their payments.
we paid. We shipped the water and we treated the sewer. There was an expense to that. Somebody paid for that, but the user didn't fully pay. So the tax.
Mike, I think what Carrie Ann said is that, yes, the fees that were raised did pay for it. That, we
But
have-
we're running, we had a fund balance and then we've pretty much wiped it out.
I think you get my point.
Yeah.
But somehow you gotta, and that's your job, you gotta thread this needle on, the users have to pop up. The reality is they've been underpaying, you know, I don't know how you do it, but I'm just saying,
Do the users know that they've been underpaying?
probably not.
They do.
Some do, some don't, just like
It's
everything else.
been an ongoing issue. There's been hearings at least 3 times in the last 12 years. And at least 3 times in the last 12 years, the rates went up. You want the scary thing? It was 18 years between the rate increase in 2013 and when the rates were last changed before that, okay? Because the town had $1 million in the bank. So rather than raising the rates for anybody for 18 years, they just drew down the $1 million. And Michael, I'm sorry, but not one nickel that I have ever seen from 2000 on ever went from the general fund into the water and sewer.
Well, that's
What
not
you're saying,
completely
that
accurate.
evidently it was a slush fund.
What's that?
That's not completely accurate. There is a
What?
line item to support the water.
He put it in, but it was never there before. then.
I don't put anything there
Okay.
on my own.
Let me read
So
something.
I have a question. If this project hadn't been done, would the rates go up less? Would you need to raise the rates less if we hadn't done this project?
No,
No.
the rate, first of all, there's an operational expense. It's gone up. We haven't adjusted to it. We have to get us to a place. Then.
But the rates will cover the capital expense as well, right, all that.
That's the part we're talking about, is making sure we don't make that too much.
So if
and working
if we
that
hadn't
process.
done this project, the rates wouldn't be
The rates would,
potentially going up as much as they are, because part of the reason the rates are going up is to finance the project.
they're going up far more just to get us to where we need to be than they will be in the future, and I'm gonna go look at the things that Mike.
No,
was
I
bringing up.
understand that, I just.
So I'm just saying, like, no,
the way the money goes.
Well, the fact is let's just look at where we are today.
Mhm.
Okay, we have pretty much wiped out the water fund, you know, the fund money that we had. First of all, we have to rebuild that fund. Secondly, assume we don't do any of this right now, we still have a water system that fails and has issues, and we have to do some capital improvement expending anyway. So my argument would be, had we had the ability to fund the capital fund over the past 20 years, okay, we would have a bigger nest egg. Now, because we haven't done it that way, now we have to
Right.
do it through financing.
Right.
The cost is about the same. You know, at the end of the day, the only difference is what you're paying in interest, which we're paying virtually nothing because it's SRF. So when you actually look at the cost, because it's all based on depreciation. If you have a system that lasts 50 years, you divide the cost by 50 years, it's kind of close to what you got to put in every year. Well, if you haven't been putting it in, we're gonna put it in now for the next 50 years and then try to maintain that level of service. Hopefully that you only take out 15 to 25 years worth of loan, and then over the next 25 years, that fund builds back up, so maybe you don't have to borrow again. Because it's going to happen.
The sequence of events was the town, somebody decided this work needed to be done. The work got done, and now we're looking at a way to fund that.
No, the work that got done is done.
You know,
This work has not been done.
So
None of this has been done.
I'm sorry, but the only time any town government money was put, general fund money, and all the factors when it was, there was a provision in the last budget or this budget, I forget which one, where it did say to take $30,000 out of the general fund and put it into the water and sewer. It's the first time, at least since 2010, that was ever done. And I'm 85–90% certain it was never done before that. So everything has come out of user fees throughout the history of this place. And a lot of people in this room are right. It's a small user base. It's very difficult to create a system. We have a unique design system here because it's so damn small. So most places, they got tertiary, secondary treatment plants. They're very expensive. They're very mechanical. They cost a boatload of money, and the user fees are reasonably high. This system, I happen to, from previous life in Vermont, I knew the guy that actually designed this system. And he told me, so what did you think of it? And I said, well, everybody else in the state of New Hampshire thinks it sucks, but I think it's actually right. I said, you take this, if you were in a home in a rural area in Vermont, you had a septic tank and a leach field. So you got processing of the solids and in the septic tank, and then you got the liquid that's supposed to be relatively free of solids that goes out to the leach field and it goes into the ground. So what do you got here? You got septic tanks and you got a leach field. What you don't have is all the tertiary and secondary treatment plants in between. In your case, you ship it, or Killington's case, they ship it down a road. No, they're still doing it.
No,
No,
well,
there's that big pipeline that goes down. the road.
well, there's actually 3 separate systems now.
Okay, I don't- it's not relevant. but-
Yeah.
So the system wasn't bad, but I'm just saying that I am absolutely certain, and I'm absolutely certain your audit reports for the last 15 years show that there was no general fund money that ever went into the water and sewer system.
Do you need us to make a motion and vote on if we support this or not? That's the goal?
Yes.
Right?
So we have to do that?
Yeah, you have to, because it
We have
was
to
on.
close the
it was on
hearing first though, right?
Basically, you have to vote to authorize the select board to move forward. You have to have a vote with the count that says so many for, so many against, or whatever that is.
It's like
Yes.
voting to recommend.
But we have to
Yeah.
close the
You're
public
voting to
hearing and open a
recommend.
budget committee meeting.
You're
right?
voting to recommend, either recommend or not recommend. and how many on each side.
We have to close the public hearing first, right?
Yeah, you close the public hearing and then do that.
So are you making a motion to close the public hearing, Sadie? All right, we have a motion on the floor to close the public hearing in a second. Any discussion on that?
I would recommend, oh, I'm sorry.
All right, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye, opposed? All right, ayes have it. The public hearing is closed and now we're back in our budget committee meeting. So it sounds like what we need to do is make a recommendation.
You have to make a motion to, like you would for any ballot article, you recommend this to the select
Yep.
board.
And it just either is recommended or does not recommend.
Correct.
I move to recommend.
You move to recommend. Do we have a second? We have a second. So Mike and Mike. Any further discussion? All right, well, then I'll call a vote. You want to do a roll? Yeah, we have to do a roll call vote, right? So, Brian,
I recommend.
John,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Sal,
Yes.
Mike Reese,
Yes.
Mike Sampson,
Yes.
Sadie?
Yes.
Karen?
She's up.
Oh.
A member of the public answered Karen when you.
Oh, oh, I thought, okay, I was like, I don't see her here, but maybe she's hiding under a table or something. That's funny. Okay, so. That was funny. Okay, but you all heard what somebody say, yes, right? Okay. All right. Yeah. And I'm gonna vote yes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 yeses, 0 nos, and 0 abstentions. So the budget committee does recommend that this pass, and so I guess we'll. Yes, Sadie?
Chet, can you let us know the time and the place of the deliberative session, because historically the budget committee attends that as well.
Yep. We wanted to, I wanted to verify the time. I mean, it's gonna be Saturday, August 24th. There was talk about, do we do it early in the morning? Do we do it midday? We were thinking like 9 o'clock in the morning if everybody's for that. I think that, because it just doesn't mess up a summer Saturday, but other than that, there's not a reason. I don't have any preference. It's just, what is the committee's? I mean, they can set it up. I just wanted, is there any objection to 9 in the morning, which was our initial?
I prefer a morning on Saturday.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So let's
Okay,
call it
either
9
way.
and we'll go from there. We'll recommend that to the select board
And where will it be held?
here.
At the EOC?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a deliberative session, so that's noticed by the select board. Budget committee, we don't have to notice a separate, we're not having a separate meeting. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye, opposed?
Discussion?
Discussion.
Yeah.